Hello and welcome to AniCore. Today we're going to explain the anime series called Dororo. As Lord Daigo waits for his wife Nui to give birth, he recalls the time he made a pact with the 12 demons in the Hall of Hell, prepared to tread the path of evil in exchange for power. When his first son's born, the demons extract their payment. The child is born without limbs, facial features, or skin. The baby set adrift in the river and left to its fate. 16 years later, he's now a young man, traveling alone, wearing prosthetics made by Dr. Jukai. While hunting a sludge-like demon, he encounters Dororo, a young petty thief being beaten by 3 men who Dororo cheated out of their goods. The demon attacks and devours the men, but the young man destroys it with blades inside his prosthetic arms. Following the death of the demon, the man's missing skin reappears, and a demon statue in the Hall of Hell is split by lightning. Meanwhile, back in Ishikawa, Daigo's second son Tahomaru returns home from hunting. However, her mother still misses her first son. Dororo accompanies the young man, who seems to be unable to see, hear, or talk. However, he has excellent sword skills, superhuman strength, and the ability to detect friendly or unfriendly beings by the color of their souls. Dororo takes the young man to a village run by a beautiful woman named Bandai and offers to slay a local monster, which rings a pilgrim bell. While there, they meet the blind monk known as Biba Hoshi, who can also detect people's souls. They discover Bandai is actually a demon who's been eating travelers, and after a long and intense fight, the young man slays the demon. The monster reappears ringing its bell, and a villager explains it's the spirit of the first being the villagers killed. The young man reveals his name Hyakimaru to Dororo and the monk. As Bandai's statue in the Hall of Hell gets struck by lightning, Hyakimaru regains his central nervous system, thus regaining the ability to feel pain. Meanwhile, Daigo is told the Sakai clan appears to be preparing for war. Many years ago, Jukai Sensei, a doctor, found Lord Daigo's abandoned and deformed infant on a riverbank. He took the child home and made special prosthetics for him so he could move about and appear normal. 6 years later, the doctor gave him the name Hyakimaru. After the kid killed a lizard demon and his right leg was magically returned to him, Jukai realized that although the boy attracted demons, his body parts had probably been stolen by demons. The doctor inserted swords into Hyakimaru's prosthetic arms before the young man left to travel the land alone. Dororo chats with the girl, while Hyakimaru stands outside, experiencing the feeling of rain for the first time. Suddenly, Hyakimaru detects a demon sword and rushes off. He encounters a man wielding the sword and only manages to defeat him by trapping the sword in his prosthetic leg. Dororo goes to retrieve the leg, but is pulled back to its owner when he touches the sword. The girl finds her brother Tanosuke and takes him home, but he's only interested in regaining the sword. Meanwhile, Hyakimaru disarms Dororo, but Tanosuke seizes the sword again and attacks Hyakimaru. This time, Hyakimaru kills him and breaks the sword, which returns his ears to him. The next morning in the Sakai territory, Hyakimaru encounters Mio, but he collapses from his wounds. The travelers stay with Mio and a group of orphan children at an abandoned temple, while Mio works at night serving the Sakai troops as a prostitute. Meanwhile, Biba Hoshi finds a better place for them, however it's inhabited by a demon. Despite his wound still healing, Hyakimaru goes to fight it. Biba Hoshi is concerned. Hyakimaru's white aura is starting to show hints of demon red. They encounter the antlion larvae-like demon, which bites off the lower half of Hyakimaru's real leg, leaving him screaming in agony. Biba Hoshi heads back to Mio's camp with Hyakimaru. His leg is half gone, but his voice has now returned. He slowly adjusts to using his hearing and his voice with the help of Mio. They become drawn to each other and the red in his soul fades. Although only partially recovered, Hyakimaru returns to kill the demon. He succeeds in killing the demon and his leg heals. However, when he and Dororo return to the temple, they find Mio mortally wounded and Daigo troops murdering the orphans because they believe Mio is a Sakai spy. Enraged by the attack on Mio, Hyakimaru goes berserk, slaughtering all the Daigo troops until Dororo intervenes, fearing Hyakimaru may become a demon himself. After burying the dead, Hyakimaru and Dororo continue their travel. A dark cloud containing a demon appears over a village, and the villagers hurriedly prepare a woman as a sacrificial bride to appease it. As Hyakimaru and Dororo see the bridal parade traveling up the mountain, Saru, a wild boy, tries to stop the sacrifice. After the boy tells them the story of the demon, Dororo and Hyakimaru agree to exterminate the demon. A dark cloud envelopes them and the demon appears as a large centipede. However, Hyakimaru is unable to differentiate it from the cloud as they both show red to his vision and it swallows the woman. Dororo and Saru devise a plan to create an explosion using the sulfurous gases emitted by the mountain, which sets the demon ablaze, but has little effect. Dororo then jumps on the demon's head and calls to Hyakimaru, enabling him to locate and attack the centipede by sound, destroying it. The dark cloud dissipates, and Hyakimaru, Dororo, and the woman, who is still alive from being swallowed whole, fall into water. Saru is relieved to find his sister and agrees to move into the village with her. Hyakimaru regains his sense of smell and, for the first time, addresses Dororo by name. Dororo falls ill with fever and Hyakimaru takes him to a temple for treatment. Later, Dororo recovers, but the priestess reveals to Hyakimaru Dororo is actually female, calling Dororo young girl after removing her clothes to wash them. Meanwhile, Daigo is told Hyakimaru may be alive from a survivor of the attack on Mio's camp. A crab-like monster devours a man after destroying his boat. Meanwhile, the drought in the Daigo lands worsens whilst the Asakura clan gathering on the border. He visits the temple and finds more demon statues destroyed, and the demons inform him Hyakimaru is still alive and is slowly retrieving the stolen pieces of his body. Daigo-san Tahomaru discovers his father is searching for a baby. Later, Tahomaru and his two bodyguards Mutsu and Hyogo encounter a village where they speak of a monster in the lake which eats fishermen. He leads a group of villagers in their boats onto the lake and attacks and damages the monster, but it's too fierce and they're forced to retreat. Tahomaru then has the villagers construct a trap, intending to lure the monster into a shallow channel where the water can be drained out. The plan works, and Tahomaru, Mutsu, and Hyogo attack it together. However, the monster fights back and almost devours Hyogo, but at the last minute Hyakimaru arrives and slays it. Tahomaru is left wondering who this stranger is. Tahomaru learns Hyakimaru's name as the two travelers arrive in the Daigo capital. There they see a play depicting Daigo as a great slayer of demons protected by the goddess of mercy. Bibahoshi seeks the truth at the Hall of Hell, while Hyakimaru and Dororo visit the remnants of Fort Banmon. It was built by Daigo and is supposedly cursed by a demon. They find remnants of a timber wall where the Asakura pin bodies of their enemies with arrows. They encounter a young boy, Sukeroku, who wishes to cross to the Asakura side and rejoin his family. Meanwhile, Tahomaru's bodyguards report the incident with Hyakimaru to Daigo, who realizes his son is alive and decides to kill him and maintain the prosperity of his domain, ignoring his wife's pleas. Tahomaru overhears their exchange and later comes across a demented woman who was present at Hyakimaru's birth. She tells him how the demons ate everything but left the boy alive. Night falls at Banmon and a 9-tailed fox demon appears. When it attacks Hyakimaru, Sukeroku uses the distraction to pass the wall with Dororo in pursuit. However, they're captured by Asakura sentries. The demon is eventually chased off by arrows of a squadron led by Daigo himself, who then approaches Hyakimaru. Hyakimaru doesn't recognize his father and is confused when he sees demonic red in Daigo's soul. Daigo orders his archers to fire at Hyakimaru, who flees. Meanwhile, Dororo and Sukeroku are held in an Asakura prison with other prisoners, but Dororo manages to escape. In the Daigo compound, Tahomaru confronts his mother about his brother's fate, but his father explains the bargain he made with the demons to save their land. Hyakimaru appears and is seen by his mother and brother, but Daigo orders him killed. Tahomaru is horrified, but Daigo asks Tahomaru if he would be willing to sacrifice the land to save his brother. The Asakura start to kill their prisoners at the Banmon to provoke a war, and the Daigo army charges forward, attracting the fox demon. Lord Daigo arrives with his army, and Tahomaru, who was reluctantly accepted his father's decision, attacks Hyakimaru. Hyakimaru breaks Tahomaru's sword and damages his right eye, then kills the demon, which is sucked into the Banmon. Nui arrives and begs forgiveness for her complicity in Daigo's bargain. She then stabs herself, and her sacrifice causes her goddess of mercy statue to collapse the Banmon. Survivors of Sukeroku's village arrive, and Sukeroku is reunited with his mother. Bibahoshi picks up Nui's small headless wooden statue of the goddess of mercy, which sacrificed its own head at Hyakimaru's birth so the child wouldn't lose his head in his father's bargain with the demons, and its gentle green aura fades. Later, Hyakimaru and Dororo visit an onsen where they encounter Biba Honshi and other children who see a map which appears on Dororo's back. Nui is shown to have survived, but Dahomaru has been blinded in his right eye. In a flashback, Dororo's father, the bandit Hibukuru, drew part of a map of the location to his hidden money onto the back of his wife and the rest on Dororo's back so they could retrieve it together later. Dororo memorized the map on her mother's back before she died. In the present, Biba Honshi and Hyakimaru realize the map appears when Dororo's back heats up, which Biba Honshi says gives her some choices in life. Hyakimaru continues his search for demons, unconcerned even when a huge baby-like monster grabs Dororo. They arrive at a burnt-out temple and the monsters disappear as they encounter Sabame, the lord of the land, carrying a flower offering to the spirit who inhabits the site. He invites them to stay at his home, where he says the temple housed a nunnery which exploited children before it was struck by lightning and destroyed, killing everybody inside. That night, the travelers are attacked by a caterpillar-like monster, but when Hyakimaru wounds it, a huge moth-like demon, Mai Onba, appears and carries it away. The moth lands near Sabame and transforms into a white-haired woman. After she tells Sabame the food he provided for her children was too strong, he consoles her and promises to protect her and her children. Dororo visits Sabame's prosperous village, where everyone seems happy. She finds a rice storehouse deep in the forest but is pushed into the basement by the villagers. It's filled with the caterpillar monsters, which menace Dororo, but the baby monster returns to save her. The monster bursts open, releasing the spirits of the children from the temple which Sabame and the villagers had fed to Mai Onba after burning it down. Outside the village, Sabame tells Hyakimaru how he accepted the Mai Onba, who fed on samurai and beasts to protect the village, and then took her as his wife. The Mai Onba moths emerge from their chrysalides and attack Hyakimaru, who fiercely fights back. However, the last one destroys Hyakimaru's prosthetic leg and then sacrifices itself to set fire to the village. Meanwhile, Dororo burns down the storehouse, destroying the caterpillars and the village's rice supplies, causing the villagers to fight amongst themselves over the remaining food. Hyakimaru finds and kills the original Mai Onba, which returns his spinal column to him. He and Dororo walk back through Sabame's burnt-out village where many villagers lie dead, including Sabame. Dororo wonders if they did the right thing, but Hyakimaru states his only concern is killing demons. Dororo and Hyakimaru walk their separate ways, but a bandit named Itachi who betrayed Dororo's father finds her. Itachi has half of the map from Dororo's mother's back and demands to see Dororo's half. She denies knowledge of a map, but Itachi and his men take her with them, believing she's memorized it. They travel for days, following Dororo's mother's half of the map, which Itachi discovered after he dug up her body. They arrive at Cape Hakotsu, where the treasure is located, but can't reach it without a boat. After failing to find boats at a nearby village which they believe was destroyed by bandits, they meet Shiranui, a one-armed youth who offers to take them across. They board two boats pulled by huge sharks, Jiromaru and Saburomaru. Midway across, Shiranui reveals he fed his arm to the sharks, however they developed a taste for human flesh, so he then killed the villagers to feed them. On his signal, the sharks capsize one of the boats and devour the men on board. Not wanting them to gorge themselves, he leaves Saburomaru to watch the second boat until they come back later to eat. Disheartened, Itachi recounts how he and his men were exploited by his lord. Dororo berates them for giving up and jumps in the water as bait to lure Saburomaru. On her signal, they pull her up, and when the shark surfaces, they stab and kill it. They then paddle ashore at Cape Hakotsu. When Shiranui comes ashore to investigate, he's savagely beaten by the bandits. Itachi strips Dororo's clothes looking for the map and realizes Dororo is a girl, while the heat of the fire reveals the map on her back. With the completed map, they tie up Dororo and leave, while Shiranui vows revenge. Elsewhere, as Hyakimaru struggles to walk, he passes a monk who tells him of a man nearby who can give him a new leg. Jukai is adding limbs to the dead on a battlefield when a ghoul attacks, but Hyakimaru appears and kills it. Back in his cage, Jukai is horrified when Hyakimaru explains what his father did to him. Suddenly, a landslide blocks the entrance to the cave. While Hyakimaru digs his way out, he reveals he's not alone as he remembers Dororo. Emerging from the cave, they find the fruit of a nearby demon tree producing more ghouls. Hyakimaru slays them all until he eventually pierces the tree's heart and destroys it. At the Daigo compound, Nui recovers, but Dahomaru leaves to kill a reported ghoul without visiting her. He and his aides find and wound a rat-like ghoul. Dahomaru then burns the building to kill both the ghoul and its offspring who are still alive inside, pledging his sword to defend Daigo land. When they return, Daigo sends Dahomaru and a small army to kill Hyakimaru. Meanwhile, Hyakimaru rows a small boat towards Cape Hakotsu. Shiranui calls on the giant shark Jiromaru to eat Saburomaru's body, and it evolves into a demon capable of moving onto land. It attacks Dororo, but she's saved by Hyakimaru, who slays the demon. Hyakimaru's left leg is restored. Meanwhile, Itachi finds a cave and two of his men rush in but are killed by booby-trapped explosives. Dahomaru and a fleet land on the shore in pursuit of Hyakimaru, and Dahomaru gives orders to leave no one alive. Several of Itachi's remaining men fall to Daigo arrows, and Dororo and Hyakimaru come across a wounded Itachi. Hyakimaru is attacked by Dahomaru, Mutsu and Hyogo, so Itachi grabs Dororo and flees. High above, Shiranui detonates the booby trap bombs he removed in an attempt to kill everyone, killing himself and causing a landslide. Many of Dahomaru's men are killed and Hyogo is badly wounded, so they decide to withdraw, assuming Hyakimaru is dead. Meanwhile, Dororo and the mortally wounded Itachi fall into a cave created by the explosion and discover the treasure. Itachi dies after seeing it. Hyakimaru finds Dororo, who decides to leave the treasure hidden until she decides what to do with it. Hyakimaru and Dororo seek the swordsmith to repair the swords in Hyakimaru's prosthetic. Hyakimaru refits the repaired sword and continues his journey with Dororo. Dahomaru and his aides observe misfortune befalling Daigo's villages, and since it started at the borders and is spreading inwards, they suspect the demons are upset Hyakimaru isn't dead. Back in his compound, Daigo realizes his deal with the demons has been revoked since the destruction of the Goddess of Mercy statue, and the days of prosperity are now over. Meanwhile, Hyakimaru and Dororo encounter Despot Saburota, who's hunting a local demon that ate his mother. They lay in wait and a gigantic Nue appears. Hyakimaru goes to fight it but is intercepted by Saburota, who now delights in seeing the demon devour terrified travelers. During the fight, Hyakimaru and Dororo fall down a rocky embankment and Dororo's arms become trapped. Hyakimaru is unable to free her despite breaking his left prosthetic arm, and subterranean water begins to rise. Suddenly, Biwahoshi appears and frees Dororo, though his sword is broken. Again, determined to regain his body, Hyakimaru attacks and badly wounds the Nue. It eats Saburota in desperation, absorbing him into his body. Hyakimaru finally slays it, however no part of his body is returned to him this time, even when he cuts the Nue to pieces, much to the horror of Dororo. Biwahoshi watches sadly as the brutality results in Hyakimaru's aura gaining a red heart, thinking he has a heavy fate to bear. Hyakimaru realizes he must confront Daigo to have his body fully restored. Hyakimaru approaches Daigo territory, and Dororo is saddened his single-minded desire to recover his body parts. They're recognized by a villager who notifies Daigo. Meanwhile, the situation worsens in Daigo territory. Villages which have become diseased are burnt and their inhabitants killed. Able-bodied men are conscripted for the war against the threatening Asakura clan. Horses, including a nursing mother horse called Midoro, are requisitioned. Dahomaru decides to take Mutsu and Hyogo to stop Hyakimaru himself. They find Hyakimaru and Dororo at a ravine littered with soldiers' bodies and attack him together. Hyakimaru severs Mutsu's right arm and Hyogo's left arm, and again cuts Dahomaru's right eye as Dororo looks on in horror at Hyakimaru's savagery. Suddenly, a group of men sent by Daigo to protect their prince intervene. The leader sends Midoro loaded with explosives towards Hyakimaru, killing the horse and blowing Hyakimaru into the ravine. Dororo is captured by the villagers and Dahomaru is subdued by a dart when he refuses to leave. Later, spirits possess Midoro's body parts, turning it into a flaming horse. Dahomaru's group return home with Dororo while Daigo prepares to repel an impending attack by the Asakura clan, planning to fight at Banmon. Hyakimaru is enraged because Dororo has been kidnapped, his rage drawing the demon horse to him. Dahomaru visits Hyogo's sister Mutsu, who lost her right arm and is also weak from a disease she was hiding, but she refuses to see him as she won't risk infection. Meanwhile, Nui frees Dororo in gratitude for providing companionship for her son Hyakimaru and leaves with him. Their boat is smashed in the strong current and they're rescued by Daigo refugees, including Biwahoshi. Nui continues to stay to help care for the sick and wounded. Mutsu leaves the compound badly ill, prompting Tahomaru and Hyogo to go after her. Elsewhere, Hyakimaru has joined with the demonic horse Midoro and is cutting a bloody swathe through Daigo's soldiers, seeking Dororo. Mutsu staggers to the demon temple and offers herself to the 12th and final demon to protect the land and its people. Tahomaru and Hyogo arrive to see her offer rejected. However, when Tahomaru, Mutsu and Hyogo later intercept Hyakimaru, their wounds have been healed by the demon. Mutsu and Hyogo each bear one of Hyakimaru's real arms, and Tahomaru has his 2 eyes. Daigo villagers near the border prepare for the impending war and Midoro's foal runs away. Hyakimaru attacks Tahomaru, Mutsu and Hyogo to reclaim his eyes and arms. Meanwhile, Nui and Dororo arrive at the battle but are held back by Biwahoshi. Midoro attacks Mutsu and Hyogo but is distracted by the arrival of a foal and is wounded. Enraged, Midoro tears off Hyogo's head and crushes Mutsu, but their bodies are controlled by the demon, which uses their arms to fatally wound Midoro. On their deaths, Hyakimaru's arms return to him and he grabs the 2 sword blades that were in his prosthetics with his bare hands to keep fighting Tahomaru. Confused by emotions when he sees Nui and Dororo approach, Hyakimaru runs off with Tahomaru in pursuit. At the border, Daigo leads his army forward, determined to defeat the Asakura and give meaning to his decisions. Hyakimaru follows Tahomaru to the Daigo castle and their fight resumes. During the struggle, they knock over a candle stand, setting the castle on fire. The smoke alerts Dororo and Nui, who are drawn by concern for the young brothers. Tahomaru and Hyakimaru continue their fierce battle inside the burning Daigo castle, each believing it's their inherited domain. Meanwhile, Nui leaves Biwahoshi and Dororo while she enters the castle through a hidden tunnel and meets Jukai. Above them, Hyakimaru finally defeats Tahomaru but doesn't kill him. The demon with Hyakimaru's eyes tries to take control of Tahomaru, but he removes the eyes, which return to Hyakimaru. After Hyakimaru slays the demon, he becomes whole for the first time, and Jukai gives him a newly carved Goddess of Mercy statue. Dororo and Hyakimaru are reunited as the castle burns. Nui tends to Tahomaru as he dies in her arms and the castle collapses. Meanwhile, the last demon statue falls in the Hall of Hell and Daigo leads his army against the Asakura, losing many of his men. Later, Dororo proposes to retrieve the treasure to help the Daigo refugees, while Hyakimaru finds his father wounded but defiant in the Hall of Hell. However, when Hyakimaru departs without killing him, leaving the Goddess of Mercy statue behind, Daigo realizes if he hadn't made the pact with the demons, Hyakimaru may have had the ability to save his land. Hyakimaru departs alone, leaving Dororo behind, knowing, however, that they will meet again in the future. In the final scene some years later, Dororo, a young woman, runs to greet Hyakimaru, who smiles as he turns to see her. That's all folks, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.